we will figure this out, I think. But you mentioned a word in there that is going to easily transition us to the next topic. And boy, it's a doozy. And that was loyalty, right? Because loyalty, I think, in sports is important. We, the fans, want our players and our owners to feel loyal to us, to feel loyal to our city. And obviously, loyalty matters in our personal life. And the Shohei Ohtani, I guess you can call it a scandal, has been in the news now basically since we've been in Charlotte. I think it dropped maybe that Thursday, maybe that Friday. I'm not going to lie. There is more information out than there was when we first found out about it, but I know still nothing about it.
Yeah, I've caught bits and pieces of it, right? I mean, I'm hearing it, which it's all secondhand, I guess. I know that he did like a little press conference where he just made a statement and didn't answer questions, I don't think. But to me, it's, off of what I've gathered, it seems very clear that I think it's impossible that he was oblivious. I mean, the best case scenario for him to not get in any trouble is that this person who was, you know, a trusted friend, his interpreter, um, an employee of the Dodgers, all these things, just stole $4.5 million from him, right? Um, but I don't think that's the case, and it seems like that this guy might have just been the fall guy and the dude placing bets. And it's not like he just bet 4.5 million. He lost 4.5 million. You
Correct.
certainly won at some point. I mean, even the worst gambler is probably still going to win 40% of the time if they're actually trying. And so who knows what the full amount is. And one thing too that has to be you have to remember in this is sports betting is illegal in California. That's a state that hasn't legalized it yet. So there are legal implications to this beyond just like the morality clause when it comes to being a professional athlete.
It's it's so interesting. And I think, like, okay, so I struggle with a lot of what's been presented because I think I always have a healthy cynicism when it comes to situations like this. And there's so many things that have changed. The thing that bothers me the most is that the initial report, at least what I heard, was that the interpreter was fired because of $4.5 million in gambling debt. And all of a sudden, the story changed. It changed after a team meeting that was, by the way, closed off to reporters or any type of media. And all of a sudden, instead of him being responsible for paying off these debts, it's now, oh, I stole the money from Shohei Ohtani. And there's a few things that I'm struggling with, and maybe you can help me. You're my advisor here, my therapist in this regard. But it's like I can believe Shohei Ohtani when he says that he didn't gamble on baseball. I'm willing to believe him at face value. I'm even willing to believe Shohei Ohtani that he didn't know that this guy that he has probably trusted with many things in his life since coming over here didn't know that this guy was transferring money out of his bank account. I'll even believe that. The part that I have a problem with is what bank is going to do this without the sign off of the account holder. And I got to think that Shohei Ohtani is the account holder of his own money, even if he has asked somebody else to manage it for him. I just have a real hard time believing that Ohtani knew zero.
You're right. And these, casinos, assuming he operated through a bookie, through a casino or whatever, um, they're not going to let you bet that kind of money without, if you or I walked in, and tried to get a $4 million line of credit at MGM to bet on sports, like they're gonna kind of like look at us funny, and then
Security
but
would
they're
be
gonna look
there in
into
a heartbeat.
they're gonna look into like our financials and try to determine if we're good for it. And so that's the other part of it that's really strange is that at some point in time they would have had likely this guy had to be vetted whether by a bookie, a middleman, or a casino themselves. Because Los Angeles isn't incredibly far from Vegas. I mean, he could have been going to Vegas and doing this. And, so I find it harder to believe that like Otani wasn't aware in that sense, but maybe he wasn't. I mean, if it was just like a shady bookie, and maybe the bookie did know where it was coming from, but didn't care, because he was pocketing some cash off the deal. But uh, it's it's extremely strange, and you're right. What bank, what institution, is going to sit there and just like let this happen. If it's not Shohei personally withdrawing the funds, and to think if that guy would, Shohei Ohtani is either the most honest, trustworthy, nicest guy on earth, or the opposite, maybe. What I don't know that there's any in between at this point. I mean, either he is completely um, in on what's happening and is lying through his teeth in an attempt to save himself, or he literally is just so naive and honest that this guy just robbed him blind.
I think there's a lot of things at play. I think, first of all, I think that it's a fact that rich people, and Ohtani is rich by every objective standard, a lot of them don't know how much money they actually have. That's why I said I'll believe him that he didn't know that his money was being stolen, because it's very possible that he doesn't know how much he has. Because in my opinion, I'm like, how do you not know you're missing $4.5 million? Again, this is not like this guy placed a $40,000 bet. $4.5 million. This is a large chunk of change, again, by any objective measure. I'm also willing to understand that when Ohtani and a lot of international players come here, many of them have interpreters because speaking their native language is much more comfortable, and they can get in trouble speaking in English. And also, acclimating to American life is not easy for them, for a lot of them. Not saying Ohtani's in that camp, because I don't know the differences between living in Japan and living in the US, right? But I can understand him having a guy who handles that kind of stuff for him so he can solely play baseball. But then you also hear about the fact that they have this team meeting and Ohtani didn't know what they were going to talk about in the team meeting. I'm like, this guy just signed a $700 million contract. And if he's not the kind of player that's like, I want to know when shit is happening, then he doesn't have the temperament to be a champion, because $700 million, that guy should be told everything that is happening in the organization. And the fact that they're not going to brief him when they're going to talk about this in front of the team, that seems really strange.
Yeah, that's definitely odd. I haven't heard a lot about that necessarily, so I can't speak too much to that situation, but definitely bizarre that he seems so unaware of everything. Like I said, he's either so just naive and detached from everything other than just playing baseball, or he's in denial and total liar. Like I said, I don't know how it could not be one or the other.
If he's a total liar, this shifts to a completely different conversation about sports betting, players betting on sports. We've discussed it before, but if Ohtani is lying and he bet on baseball, literally the worst possible scenario that baseball could afford in any way, I think baseball could easily get through another strike before having the face of their sport. I actually did this with my wife earlier, and she knows who Ohtani is. And I said, okay, so you know who he is. You know who Mike Trout is because I talk about him. Can you name a third baseball player? And her answer flatly was no, I could not name a baseball player. Shohei Ohtani, whether he's American or not, is the face of Major League Baseball. Like, hard stop, the
Oh,
face of Major
absolutely.
League
Yep.
Baseball. And if he was betting on his own sport, good Lord. Like,
Yeah,
Pete
it'd be
Rose
terrible.
is, if they're not going to ban him for life, Pete Rose better be in the Hall of Fame. That's all I got to say about that. But we've talked about it before, because players have been nailed for making bets, and we have both been firmly on the fence of swift and punitive punishments for those things, because the rules are clear that you're not supposed to do this. But we've also said, like, what would happen if it was Mahomes? And I never thought we would get there with Ohtani. I never in a million years thought a guy like that was going to be embroiled in something like this that is so strange. And Major League Baseball is investigating. They're not going to find anything, but my goodness, they better hope that some government agency doesn't prove that Ohtani bet on baseball, because they are going to be so screwed.
Yeah, that would be bad news. And baseball's not a sport, not an organization that can really afford something, for something like this to happen.
Absolutely right.
And I tell you what, though, I am totally here for the Pete Rose Shohei Ohtani podcast
Absolutely.
that would fire up if Shohei gets banned and everything else. So he'll have his interpreter next to him.
My goodness.
And yeah, I'm ready for it. Have you seen the clip where someone's like, "This is interesting." It shows them in the dugout, and like you can tell they're playing a game to like get the ball, and like he's super pumped about like winning or whatever. And it's like, this guy seems pretty competitive. Like, I don't know. Like to me, just based off the little bit I've heard about it, and shame on me for not being digging deeper to have more concrete details.
Will be our
But
best video yet.
I think it's not looking good for him, based off what, you know, the information I have consumed. I don't see a way, unless shit literally just gets brushed under the rug. I don't see a way this ends well for him.
I, maybe it depends on what I think a government agency finds, but I think Major League Baseball is perfectly content, like putting it under the rug, whatever brushing it under the rug, whatever, sweeping it under the rug, because I don't think they can afford this. But this also kind of gets to another
Can
conversation.
you
But
afford let me ask this question. Can you
go ahead.
afford to let it let's say if you're Major League Baseball and you know it happened, and let's say that basically anybody in Major League Baseball knows it happened, and you let it go, isn't that worse?
If people know about it, I'm saying that I think Major League Baseball, if they find out about it, nobody's ever going to know. It's going to be like, what did Roger Goodell do with Spygate? Burn the tapes, right? It's going to be something like that. Like, this is best that nobody ever knows what happened. You can file it under the conspiracy theory stuff, just like Michael Jordan retiring. Everybody thought it was a 2-year suspension for gambling, right? So I don't know, but baseball can't afford this because, and I know that I beat this drum a lot, but I think it's true. When you look at last year's World Series was the worst rated World Series. Now, again, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but attendance seems to be down, ratings seem to be down, the viewer base continues to get older, and baseball really can't afford to have their best player and the face of their sport, who people gravitate toward casually because oh my goodness, he pitches and he hits. They can't afford to have him be out for any extended period of time. And I just think that Major League Baseball, they're going to investigate it, or they're going to say they are, but unless a government agency forces their hand, I do not believe they have the integrity to actually tell anybody about it.
Which is so hypocritical, considering baseball is one
Steroids?
of these unwritten rules, respect the game, all this bullshit that they peddle. And so I totally agree that this would be devastating to baseball, if it is found that he did bet on baseball, that he gets banned and so on and so forth. It'd be absolutely devastating. I can tell you this much though. I would have a lot of respect for MLB if they did if issue a severe punishment, even knowing what the implications would be.
Here's the thing, right? You just got me thinking about this, about baseball and the hypocrisy. So you mentioned like the unwritten rules and how weird people get with bat flips and other shit like that. Major League Baseball knew steroids was a problem and turned the other cheek because the home run chase of 97, summer 98 saved the sport. Literally saved the sport, because coming out of the 1994 strike, man, people did not want to watch baseball. And then all of a sudden, home runs go up, offense goes up, and Major League Baseball is profiting off of it. And then Barry Bonds gets close to a sacred record, and all of a sudden now it's a problem. And then you get the aughts and the late 2000s with all the congressional stuff. And now people who were on the Mitchell Report are getting in because we've all kind of realized, I guess everybody was doing it. Major League Baseball turned a blind eye. And so if they turned a blind eye to that, they're definitely going to turn a blind eye to this. Even though I think, and this is maybe hyperbolic on me, but you know me, I'm not against sports betting, especially for the individual. You, do whatever you want. If you lose all your money because you don't know what you're doing, it's on you. It's not on me. But I worry that the temptation for sports players and the people that are circling kind of in their immediate orbit is too great. And I worry that it's going to erode the foundation of the integrity of sports in general. And then people like us who just love to watch sports, are we going to want to watch sports if we know that the literal fix is in?
Oh boy. This is something that, I mean, betting has been going on for a long time, long
Sure.
before it was legal. It's similar to NIL, right? Like it was always happening under the table. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew a bookie. The difference is now it's more accessible.
Sure.
Um,
Out in the open.
and yeah, and it's above board in some states. And so,
Good point.
maybe that the fact that it is more accessible increases the temptation because anybody can download the app on their phone and do it right there. Um, as opposed to having to know a bookie, trust a bookie to not out you to somebody and, obviously maybe get yourself associated with some unsavory folks and then get into, now they want you get into a little bit of debt. Now it's like, hey man, like, okay, like if you don't have the money, well, this is how you can help us. How about you drop a couple passes tomorrow? One of those things where I think though that the odds of that, if you're just, you're not getting involved with that community, if you're just betting on an app on your phone, right? So I do think that maybe in some way but obviously you're not going to be doing it from your personal cell phone either if you're a professional
If you're
athlete.
smart,
Yeah, I mean, so and that's why, in this case, if it did happen to be um something that Shohei knew about, he of course was using someone else, but um is it going to erode the foundation, the integrity of sports? I don't know.
could it
And
though?
maybe yeah, oh, certainly it could. I mean, but there have been accusations for a long time across the board that a lot of these things are quote unquote rigged. I mean, someone came out saying that every football game in the SEC was fixed,
Oh God,
here recently or something like that. And so who knows, man? You know what? It may all turn into where it's like pro wrestling. Pro wrestling still it does really well, and everybody knows it's fake, right? I mean, fake in the sense of it is prearranged outcomes. It's sports
yes,
entertainment, right? They're
yes.
still tremendous athletes and so on and so forth, but sports entertainment, and really it just depends on how you want to look at it. I think we as sports fans hold um, sports in a kind of a sacred place a little bit, and so it would be really it'd be devastating, I think, to a lot of people if you really couldn't trust that what you were seeing on the field was legit. But
Y-
at the end of the day, it would probably still be entertaining.
I would like to think so, but I think what worries me is that I know that these athletes make a lot of money, but the idea that they can help themselves, right? If they feel like they're not getting paid what they think they should be getting paid. And it's like, wait a minute, I can place bets on myself and actually help determine the outcome. And it's like one person does it. I mean, I don't know if you heard about this, but the Temple basketball team playing through their conference tournament with point shaving allegations, I think it was, on like the whole team. And they're making this run. They almost made the NCAA tournament. And it's like, where's the line? What happens here? And it's like, if Ohtani, who seems to me to be a pure guy, but then again, also one of the most private people out there, like I don't know anything about him. Not that I should know anything about him, but most of us know something about these players, and we don't know anything about this guy. This situation is really strange, and it just opens up this conversation, I think, about whether the players and the people around them are susceptible to getting in trouble with this stuff and eroding the integrity. I'm not like gloom and doom saying it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. I think that players are too competitive to throw games, but it starts to become a trend. The players now that have a different work ethic than the players 20 years ago, 20 years from now, are these players going to feel the same competitiveness, right? Are they going to want to just lay out for their team? I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll go into the business for themselves, but just something that I think about when I see this situation. But I think this is far from over.
Oh, it certainly is, and I mean, this isn't going to be the last gambling scandal that we hear about.
No,
This is something that unfortunately is going to be probably fairly regular. What if the Temple basketball team? What if they tanked mid-season so that they could bet on themselves to win the A10 tournament, and then they almost pulled it off, right?
maybe that's what it was.
Uh,
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, well, there it is, right? It's like, wow. So
drive the number up.
yeah, we could get paid more than the NIL is paying us if we just tank the season and make a run. Now that's hard to do because there's a lot of factors that go into that. But I'm telling you, like these are the types of things that make me wonder.